3 days before my retirement party, I caught my business partners plotting to force me out without my shares. I kept quiet. Party night was their shock while I announced my hostile takeover from the boardroom. Then my partner called. The conference room smelled like expensive cologne and betrayal. I was standing outside the frosted glass doors of Meridian Capital's executive suite, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hand, when I heard my name followed by laughter. Not friendly laughter. The kind that comes when someone is being buried. Victor Ashworth's voice carried through the crack in the door, that smooth baritone that had charmed investors for 23 years. Raymond thinks he's walking away with 40% equity and a golden parachute. By Friday, he'll be lucky to leave with his stapler. More laughter. Nathan Cross this time, his wheeze unmistakable. The man I'd hired fresh out of Wharton in 1998, who I'd mentored for 2 decades, who called me Uncle Ray at company barbecues. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers. It hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed down the empty hallway, but no one inside the conference room noticed. They were too busy dividing up my life's work like vultures over a carcass that wasn't dead yet. I'd been building Meridian Capital for 27 years when the betrayal started, though I didn't recognize it at the time. In 1997, I was a 31-year-old analyst at Lehman Brothers, with a wife, a mortgage, and a dream that kept me awake most nights. The dream was simple: build an investment firm that actually cared about its clients, that didn't treat retirement accounts like casino chips. I quit Lehman with $47,000 in savings and a business plan written on legal pads during my commute. My wife Diana thought I was insane. My parents thought I was throwing away a perfectly good career. Victor Ashworth was the only one who believed in me. We'd met at a conference in Chicago, 2 young guys in cheap suits talking about changing the industry over bad hotel coffee. He had the connections I lacked, the old money polish that opened doors in Manhattan. I had the analytical mind, the work ethic, the vision. Together, we built something real. By 2005, Meridian managed $200 million in assets. By 2015, $3.2 billion. By last year, $8.7 billion under management, 340 employees across 6 offices, and a reputation as one of the most trusted boutique firms on the East Coast. Victor and I brought Nathan in during the 2008 crisis, when everyone else was running scared and we needed someone who could navigate the wreckage. He was hungry, brilliant, and absolutely ruthless in negotiations. I admired that about him then. Should have recognized it as a warning. The 3 of us became partners officially in 2012, splitting equity 40-30-30. My 40% reflected my founding role and the fact that I'd personally guaranteed $12 million in loans during our early expansion. The partnership agreement was ironclad, drafted by Eleanor Blackwood, senior partner at Blackwood and Associates, one of the most respected corporate attorneys in New York. I trusted that document like I trusted my own heartbeat. I trusted Victor and Nathan the same way. 27 years of working together, of celebrating victories and surviving disasters, of building something from nothing. When you spend that much time with people, you stop seeing them clearly. You see the versions of them you've created in your mind, the loyal partners, the trusted friends. You don't see the knives behind their backs. The first red flag came 6 months before my planned retirement, though I dismissed it at the time. Victor started scheduling client meetings without me, something he'd never done in our entire partnership. I told myself it made sense. I was transitioning out, letting him take the lead. Then I noticed Nathan having closed-door conversations with our CFO, Margaret Liu, conversations that ended abruptly when I walked by. I told myself they were probably discussing quarterly projections, sensitive numbers that didn't need my input anymore. The week before I overheard them in the conference room, I found a draft email on the shared server that someone had forgotten to delete. It was from Victor to an attorney I didn't recognize, discussing partnership dissolution options and equity restructuring mechanisms. My chest tightened when I read it, but I rationalized it away. Maybe they were exploring buyout options for my shares. Maybe they were planning to bring in new partners after I left. I should have confronted them then. Instead, I closed the email and went back to planning my retirement party, choosing the wine list and finalizing the guest list for the celebration of a career that was apparently already over. Standing outside that conference room, coffee soaking into the carpet around my shoes, I finally stopped lying to myself. I pressed closer to the door, holding my breath, and listened as my partners dismembered my legacy. The board meeting is scheduled for Friday at 4 p.m., Victor was saying. We'll present the misconduct allegations right after Raymond makes his little farewell speech. The optics will be perfect. Founding partner revealed as a fraud at his own retirement party. What about Eleanor Blackwood? Nathan asked. She drafted the original partnership agreement. She'll know. Eleanor is retiring herself next month. I've already spoken with her successor at the firm, Jonathan Mercer. He's hungry, and he owes me a favor from the Westbrook deal. I heard papers shuffling. The forensic accountant I hired found exactly what we needed. Raymond's signature on 3 wire transfers totaling $2.3 million to an offshore account in the Caymans. My blood went cold. I'd never signed any such transfers. I'd never had an offshore account in my life. The signatures are convincing? Nathan asked. Convincing enough. And once the allegations are public, Raymond will be too busy defending himself to fight the equity seizure. Section 14.7 of the partnership agreement allows for immediate share forfeiture in cases of verified financial misconduct. I must have made a sound, some involuntary noise of shock or rage, because the voices inside suddenly stopped. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs, and walked as calmly as I could toward the elevator. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the button. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the polished steel doors. 58 years old, gray at the temples, the face of a man who had just discovered that everything he believed about his life was a lie. 3 days. I had 3 days before they destroyed me. The walk to my car took forever. My Lexus was parked in its usual spot, the one with R. Lawson, founding partner, stenciled on the concrete. I wondered how long that sign would last after Friday. I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine, trying to think through the panic that was flooding my brain. They had forged my signature on wire transfers. They had fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. They had corrupted the legal firm that was supposed to protect my interests. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment betrayal. This was a carefully orchestrated coup that had been planned for months, maybe years. My first call was to Diana. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and unsuspecting. "Hey, honey, did you finalize the wine order?" I tried to speak, but nothing came out. "Ray, are you there? Is everything okay?" "I need you to do something for me," I finally managed. "Don't ask questions yet, just do it. Go to my home office, open the safe, and take out the backup hard drive, the one labeled Archive 2019. Put it somewhere safe, not in the house, maybe your sister's place." Silence on the line. Then, "Ray, you're scaring me. I'll explain everything tonight. Just please, do this for me." She agreed, her voice tight with worry, and I hung up before I could break down completely. That hard drive contained backups of every email, every financial document, every board meeting recording from the past 5 years. It was a habit I'd developed after the 2008 crisis, when I'd watched firms collapse because crucial documentation had conveniently disappeared. I'd always thought I was protecting the company. Turned out I was protecting myself from the company. My second call was to someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, Franklin Okafor, forensic accountant, former FBI financial crimes investigator, the man who had helped us navigate a client fraud case back in 2019. He answered with the same gruff efficiency I remembered. "Lawson, been a while. Franklin, I need your help, urgently." "I'm listening." I told him everything. The overheard conversation, the forged signatures, the timeline. When I finished, there was a long pause. "They're trying to Section 14.7 you," he said finally. "I've seen this playbook before. Fabricate evidence, force immediate share forfeiture, tie up the victim in legal battles until they're too broken to fight back. Can you prove the signatures are forged?" "If they are forged, yes. But I'll need access to the original documents and exemplars of your genuine signature for comparison. Do you have anyone inside who can get me the wire transfer records without alerting Victor or Nathan?" I thought about it. Margaret Liu, the CFO, had been acting strange around me for months. I couldn't trust her. But there was someone else. Thomas Riley, our IT director, who had been with the company almost as long as I had. He'd complained to me just last month about being excluded from certain system accesses by Nathan. "I might have someone," I said. That night, I sat Diana down in our living room and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a cold, focused determination I'd seen only a handful of times in our 31 years of marriage. "So what's the plan?" she asked when I finished. "I have 3 days to prove that my partners are trying to steal my company with forged documents. If I fail, I lose 40% of an $8.7 billion firm and probably face criminal fraud charges." That's the situation. I asked about the plan. I pulled out the legal pad I'd been scribbling on during the drive home. Step 1. Get the original wire transfer documents and prove the signatures are forged. Franklin Okafor is standing by to do the forensic analysis. Step 2. Find out who created the forgeries. Victor mentioned a forensic accountant he hired. If I can trace that connection, I can prove conspiracy. Step 3. Document everything. Every conversation, every meeting, every piece of evidence. Build a case so airtight that when I present it, there's no room for them to wiggle out. Diana studied the list. "What about step 4? "Step 4 is the retirement party itself. They're planning to expose me there, in front of 300 colleagues and clients. Turn my celebration into my public execution." A thin smile crossed her face. "Then step 4 should be turning their ambush into yours." I stared at her. "What are you thinking?" Diana had been an event planner before she retired, one of the best in Manhattan. She understood staging, timing, the power of a well-orchestrated reveal. "They're counting on surprise," she said. "They think you don't know what's coming. That's your biggest advantage. Use it." She walked to the window, staring out at the darkness. "The party is Friday night at the Waldorf Grand Ballroom. 300 guests, open bar, the whole 9 yards. Victor and Nathan are planning to present their allegations right after your farewell speech, correct?" I nodded. "So let them set the stage. Let them think everything is going according to plan. But while they're preparing their attack, you prepare your counterattack. And when they pull the trigger, you're not there. You're somewhere else entirely, with undeniable proof of their conspiracy, broadcasting it to everyone who matters." Broadcasting it how? Thomas Riley controls the AV systems at the party, doesn't he? The screens, the microphones, the streaming setup for remote attendees? My heart started beating faster. He does. Then Friday night, while Victor is standing at that podium preparing to destroy you, you interrupt him. From the boardroom, where you've gathered the actual evidence, the party becomes the courtroom, and everyone Victor invited to watch your downfall becomes the jury for his. The next morning, I went to the office like nothing had changed, smiled at the receptionist, nodded to colleagues in the elevator, sat through a budget meeting where Nathan talked about exciting restructuring opportunities with a straight face. Every moment was agony. But I kept my mask in place, kept my hands from shaking, kept my voice steady when Victor stopped by my office to ask if I was excited about Friday. Couldn't sleep last night, I told him honestly. Big moment, you know? He smiled that patrician smile, all teeth and no warmth. You've earned it, Ray. Everything that's coming to you. After he left, I sat very still for a long time, breathing slowly, reminding myself that I had a plan. At lunch, I found Thomas Riley in the server room, hunched over a keyboard with his usual coffee mug, balanced precariously on a stack of hard drives. He looked up when I came in, surprise flickering across his face. Mr. Lawson, don't usually see you down here. Tom, I need to talk to you about something sensitive. Very sensitive. Can I trust you? He studied me for a moment, something shifting in his expression. I've been waiting for you to ask me that for about 2 months. Turns out Thomas had noticed the same irregularities I had. Closed meetings from which he was excluded. New system access restrictions implemented without explanation. A parallel accounting server that had been set up 3 months ago, one that he wasn't supposed to know about. I thought I was being paranoid, he said. But then Nathan asked me to create a backdated system log showing certain file accesses that never happened. I refused, said it would violate our audit protocols. Next day, I got a written warning for insubordination. Can you access that parallel server? Already have. Off the books, late at night, using credentials they don't know I copied. He pulled up a screen on his terminal. Mr. Lawson, what I found there is going to make your blood boil. The parallel server contained the entire conspiracy in documented form. Emails between Victor and a man named Gerald Stokes, the forensic accountant Victor had hired to create the forged evidence. Drafts of the fabricated wire transfers with notes about matching my signature style. Communications with Jonathan Mercer at Blackwood and Associates discussing how to manage the partnership dissolution. And most damning of all, a timeline stretching back 18 months, showing that Victor had begun planning my removal almost 2 years before my scheduled retirement. I spent the next 6 hours with Thomas, copying everything onto encrypted drives, documenting chain of custody, creating timestamps that would hold up in court. By the time we finished, I had enough evidence to prove criminal conspiracy, forgery, and fraud. But I needed one more piece. The original forged wire transfers that Victor planned to present on Friday. Those are in Margaret's office, Thomas said. Locked safe, combination changed monthly. I don't have access. I might know someone who does. That evening, I made the most difficult call of my life. Margaret Liu had been with Meridian for 15 years, had worked her way up from junior analyst to CFO through sheer determination and brilliance. I'd always considered her a protege, maybe even a surrogate daughter. But she'd been part of those closed-door meetings with Nathan. She might be complicit in everything, or she might be another victim, pressured into compliance by partners who had power over her career. Margaret agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from anyone who might recognize us. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, fingers wrapped around her cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. I know why you're here, she said before I could speak. I've been wondering when you'd figure it out. Are you part of it? I was, at first. She took a shaky breath. Nathan approached me 8 months ago, said they were conducting a confidential audit of your transactions, said they'd found irregularities, said I needed to cooperate or I could be implicated. I believed him. You have to understand, Mr. Lawson, the documents he showed me looked completely legitimate. But you know now that they're not. I figured it out about 2 months ago. The Cayman accounts they claim you transferred money to, they don't exist. I called the banks myself, used my contacts in international compliance. No accounts matching those numbers have ever been registered. Why didn't you come to me? Her eyes filled with tears. Because Nathan showed me what they had on my family. My brother owes gambling debts to people who don't accept payment plans. Nathan paid them off. If I don't cooperate, he'll expose my brother to prosecution and me to accusations of covering up your supposed fraud. I reached across the table and took her hand. Margaret, I'm going to fix this. All of it. But I need your help. She told me everything. The forged documents were in her safe, delivered by Gerald Stokes 2 weeks ago with instructions to present them at Friday's board meeting. Victor had given her a script to follow, accusations to make, a performance to deliver that would seal my fate in front of 300 witnesses. She also gave me something else, a recording. 3 months ago, before she understood what she was involved in, she'd started documenting her conversations with Nathan and Victor as insurance. The recordings were grainy, taken on her phone in her pocket, but the voices were unmistakable. By the time Ray realizes what's happening, he'll be too destroyed to fight back. That was Victor, his smooth voice dripping with contempt. The old man thinks loyalty means something in this business. He's about to learn that money is the only loyalty that counts. Nathan's response. The beautiful part is, he built this company for us. 27 years of work, and he's going to walk away with nothing. I listened to the full hour of recordings in my car outside the coffee shop. When they finished, my hands were steady for the first time in days. Not because the anger had faded, because it had crystallized into something cold and sharp, something I could use. Thursday was a performance. I showed up to the office, made small talk, reviewed final preparations for the party, even thanked Victor and Nathan publicly during a staff meeting for their years of partnership and friendship. They smiled back, probably thinking about how sweet their victory would taste. That night, I met with Franklin Okafor, who had completed his forensic analysis of the documents Thomas had copied. The signatures are definitely forged, he confirmed, spreading his analysis across my dining room table. Whoever created them is good, probably former law enforcement document examination training, but they made mistakes. The pressure patterns are inconsistent with your natural writing style, and there are micro tremors in the pen strokes that indicate tracing. Will this hold up in court? It'll hold up anywhere. I've testified in 43 federal cases. This is textbook forgery, and I can prove it beyond reasonable doubt. He handed me a bound report. But Ray, you need to understand something. What they're doing isn't just civil fraud. Creating false documents to steal equity, forging signatures on financial instruments, blackmailing an employee to commit perjury. This is conspiracy to commit multiple felonies. Victor and Nathan are looking at serious prison time if you take this to authorities. I thought about that for a long moment. Prison time. For the man who had been my best friend for 30 years, who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had held my son when he was born. For the young analyst I had mentored, promoted, trusted with my legacy. Good, I said finally. I want them to face every consequence. Friday arrived wrapped in autumn sunshine, the kind of crisp October day that makes Manhattan look like a movie set. I put on my best suit, the charcoal Tom Ford that Diana had bought me for our 30th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the gray hair and the lines around my eyes and the determination in my face. Tonight would either be my triumph or my destruction. There was no middle ground anymore. At 3 p.m., I drove to the Waldorf, where the party preparation was in full swing. Thomas was already there, working with the AV team, making subtle adjustments to the streaming setup that no one else would notice. We had tested the connection to the boardroom 3 times. It worked flawlessly. At 4 p.m., I received a text from Margaret. Documents ready. I'm so sorry for everything. The guests began arriving at 6 p.m. Partners from other firms, clients I had served for decades, industry journalists, even a few politicians I had donated to over the years. 300 people in black tie and evening gowns, drinking champagne and waiting to celebrate my career. Or, as Victor and Nathan believed, waiting to witness my public execution. I worked the room like I had at 1,000 other events, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, pretending everything was normal. At 7:30 p.m., Victor approached me with a glass of whiskey and that serpent smile. Big night, Ray. Ready for your speech? Been rehearsing all week. I'm sure it'll be memorable. He clinked his glass against mine. To the end of an era. I drank, maintaining eye contact, letting him believe he had already won. At 8 p.m., the lights dimmed, and Victor took the stage to begin the formal program. He spoke about the history of Meridian, about our early struggles and eventual triumphs, about the incredible journey we had shared. The audience applauded politely. Nathan stood near the stage, holding a folder I knew contained the fabricated evidence they planned to present after my speech. Margaret was positioned near the AV controls, pale but resolute. Thomas had his finger hovering over the switch that would change everything. Victor introduced me with words that dripped with irony only I could taste. Please welcome the man who made all this possible, our founding partner, my dear friend, Raymond Lawson. I walked to the podium through a sea of applause, my heart pounding but my face serene. I looked out at the crowd, at clients who had trusted me with their life savings, at colleagues who had built their careers under my guidance, at the 2 men who had planned to destroy me and were waiting eagerly for their moment. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. When I started Meridian Capital 27 years ago, I had a simple vision. Build something honest, something lasting, something that would make a real difference in people's lives. I paused, letting the words settle. I also believed in partnership, in trust, in the idea that the people you work beside every day, the people you share your victories and your failures with, would never betray that bond. Victor's smile flickered. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. I was wrong. The crowd stirred, confused by my tone. Victor started moving toward the stage, ready to intervene, but I continued before he could reach me. 3 days ago, I discovered that my partners, Victor Ashworth and Nathan Cross, have been planning for the past 18 months to steal my shares in this company using forged documents and fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. Gasps rippled through the audience. Victor froze mid-step, his face cycling through shock, anger, and something that looked like fear. They created false wire transfers to fake offshore accounts, forged my signature, and planned to present these fabrications tonight at my own retirement party to destroy my reputation and seize my 40% equity stake. I held up my hand as Victor started shouting denials. I have proof. Thomas, please. The massive screens behind me flickered, and suddenly the room was filled with the evidence. Copies of the forged documents with Franklin Okafor's forensic analysis, highlighting the forgery markers. Screenshots of emails between Victor and Gerald Stokes discussing the fabrication. The timeline showing 18 months of conspiracy. And then the recordings began to play. Victor's voice, smooth and contemptuous. The old man thinks loyalty means something in this business. He's about to learn that money is the only loyalty that counts. Nathan's response, cold and calculating. The beautiful part is, he built this company for us. 27 years of work, and he's going to walk away with nothing. The room erupted. Clients shouted in outrage. Board members demanded explanations. Industry journalists frantically took notes and photos. Victor stood paralyzed near the stage, his face drained of all color, while Nathan tried to edge toward the exit and found his path blocked by Thomas and 2 security guards I had quietly arranged through a former client who ran a private security firm. Margaret, I called out. She stepped forward, trembling but resolute. Tell them what they made you do. And she did. Everything. The blackmail, the forged documents, the script they had given her. The audience listened in horrified silence as she described how Victor and Nathan had threatened her family to ensure her compliance. When she finished, she turned to me. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson. I should have come to you sooner. You came to me when it mattered. That's enough. I turned back to the audience, to the ruin of Victor and Nathan's ambitions playing out on their faces. As of 4 p.m. today, I filed a formal complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI Financial Crimes Division, and the New York State Attorney General's Office. Special Agent Miriam Adebayo of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Unit has already begun an investigation. I held up a folder. I also exercised my rights under Section 23.4 of our partnership agreement, the clause that allows for emergency share transfer in cases of verified partner misconduct. As of 1 hour ago, I own 70% of Meridian Capital outright. Victor found his voice at last. This is insane. You can't do this. Those recordings were obtained illegally. That evidence is... Margaret recorded those conversations in her own office, with her own phone, in a one-party consent state. Every piece of evidence was obtained through legitimate channels and documented with proper chain of custody. Ask your new friend Jonathan Mercer at Blackwood & Associates, the one you corrupted to help you steal from me. He's going to have plenty of time to explain the legalities while he's being disbarred. The next few hours were chaos. Police arrived to take statements. FBI agents escorted Victor and Nathan out of the ballroom in handcuffs, past the very clients they had hoped would witness my humiliation. Journalists surrounded me with questions I answered calmly, methodically, letting the truth speak for itself. At 11:47 p.m., when the last guest had finally left and the Waldorf staff was cleaning up the remnants of my retirement party, my phone rang. Victor's number. I considered not answering, letting him stew in his jail cell overnight. But something made me pick up. Ray. His voice was hoarse, broken. Ray, please. We need to talk. We're talking. It wasn't supposed to go this far. The company was doing so well, and you were leaving, and I thought I deserved more, after everything I'd given. You deserved more than 30% of $8.7 billion? I deserved to be recognized. I deserved to be the one people remembered when they talked about Meridian. And there it was. The truth beneath the conspiracy, the wound that had been festering for 30 years. Victor had always believed he deserved more credit, more money, more power, and when he couldn't earn it, he decided to steal it. Victor, I'm going to say this once, so listen carefully. You had everything. Partnership in a firm worth billions, respect from clients and colleagues, a legacy you could have been proud of, and you threw it all away because you couldn't stand the thought of someone else getting the spotlight. Silence on the line. Goodbye, Victor. I hung up and walked out into the Manhattan night. The city was still buzzing with Friday energy, oblivious to the empire that had just shifted beneath its feet. The legal proceedings took 14 months. Victor was convicted of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, forgery, and attempted grand larceny. He received 8 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay $4.2 million in restitution. Nathan turned state's evidence and received a reduced sentence of 3 years, plus a lifetime ban from the securities industry. Gerald Stokes, the forensic accountant who had created the forgeries, lost his license and received 2 years for his role in the conspiracy. Jonathan Mercer was disbarred and faced civil suits from multiple clients whose interests he had compromised. Margaret Liu stayed at Meridian, promoted to partner after helping bring down the men who had blackmailed her. Her brother's gambling debts were paid off through a legal settlement with Victor's seized assets. Thomas Riley became chief technology officer and our most trusted advisor on corporate security. The company survived. More than survived, actually. Clients rallied around us after the scandal, impressed by how we had handled the crisis, by the transparency of our response, by the integrity that had been tested and proven unbreakable. Assets under management grew by $1.3 billion in the year following the exposure. Turns out, people want to invest with a firm that fights back against corruption even when it comes from within. I didn't retire that year. Couldn't. Meridian needed leadership through the transition, needed a steady hand while we rebuilt trust and restructured the partnership. Diana understood, even supported the decision, though she made me promise that we would actually take that trip to Italy we'd been planning for a decade. We went the following spring, 2 weeks in Tuscany, drinking wine and eating pasta, and not thinking about balance sheets or betrayal. On our last night in Florence, sitting on a terrace overlooking the Arno as the sun set behind the Ponte Vecchio, Diana took my hand. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked. "Building the company with them, I mean? 27 years with men who turned out to be snakes, thieves, sociopaths who happened to have good table manners?" She smiled. "Something like that." I thought about it, really considered the question for the first time. No, I don't regret it. Because despite what they tried to do, despite the betrayal, I built something real. Something that helps people, that creates jobs, that makes a difference. Victor and Nathan tried to steal that from me. They failed. The company is still standing. I'm still standing. Diana squeezed my hand. "You know what I keep thinking about? That night in our living room, when you told me everything. The look in your eyes. Like the world had ended. It felt like it had. But it hadn't. You found a way forward. You always do." I raised my glass to her, to us, to the life we had built and defended together. "We found a way forward. I couldn't have done any of it without you." She clinked her glass against mine. "I know. That's why you're buying dinner for the rest of our lives." I laughed, the first genuine laugh I could remember in a long time, and drank my wine as the city lights flickered on below us. 2 years later, I finally retired for real. We held the party in our backyard, no grand ballrooms, no 300 guests, just the people who actually mattered. Family, true friends, colleagues who had proven their loyalty when it counted. Thomas gave a speech that made everyone cry. Margaret presented me with a framed photo of the original Meridian office, the tiny space where I had worked 18-hour days with nothing but a dream and a determination to make it real. As the party wound down and guests drifted away into the summer evening, I stood alone on our deck, looking out at the garden Diana had spent years cultivating. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't read it, but something made me look. "Ray, I know you'll probably delete this, but I wanted you to know. You were right about everything. I did throw it all away. Every day in here, I think about what I had and what I lost. I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, because I betrayed someone who never deserved it. I hope someday you can forgive me. V." I stared at the message for a long time. Victor had been in prison for 18 months. He had 4.5 years left. I didn't know if I would ever forgive him. Maybe forgiveness wasn't the point. Maybe the point was simply surviving, moving forward, building something from the wreckage that others tried to create. I deleted the message and slipped my phone back in my pocket. Behind me, I could hear Diana laughing at something Thomas had said. My life was full of people who loved me honestly, who valued me for who I was, rather than what they could take from me. That was enough. That was everything. Victor once told me that money was the only loyalty that counts. He was wrong. The only loyalty that counts is the kind that doesn't ask for anything in return, the kind that shows up when everything falls apart, the kind that helps you rebuild when others try to burn it all down. I learned that lesson the hard way, in a conference room that smelled like expensive cologne and betrayal, 3 days before a retirement party that became something else entirely. And now, every morning when I wake up next to Diana, every time I see the company I built still standing strong under new leadership, every moment I spend with people who actually care about me, I'm grateful for that lesson. Victor and Nathan thought they were teaching me about the cruelty of the world. Instead, they taught me about its resilience, and my own. They planned to take everything from me at my own retirement party. Instead, I took everything from them at theirs. Some lessons are expensive. Theirs cost them their freedom, their reputations, their futures. Mine cost me a 30-year friendship I'd thought was real. But if I'm honest, I got the better deal. Because what I lost was an illusion. What I kept was the truth. And the truth, it turns out, is worth everything. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.